Well, again, shall we get started? Okay, I call this meeting, this committee of the whole meeting of June the 3rd, 2014 to order. And I'd like a motion to adopt the minutes of May 6, 2014.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Item C is budget and public engagement time, and I don't see any members of the public here other than Janice, who's a delegation. So we'll dispense with that and move right into the delegations. And Janice, you're the first one up. If you'd like to take a chair.
Thank you. Good to see you all. Nice to see you again. So I'm here for simply for informational purposes, just to let you know what I've gotten myself into now. That is that what happened was Columbia Basin Trust, in the past, their mandate has been not to support sport. They've kind of been supporting other things. Well, that is the situation. They decided that they want to designate a chunk of money to go to sport in the Columbia Basin. And they didn't know how was the best way to implement that. You know, can't just start giving money away. So they created a task force, of which I got invited onto. And I was there as a representative for Kaslo, Denver, and Newcastle. And through the process of several months, we kind of acted as, basically helping them decide what was going to be the best way to implement a program to help sport in our region. And what we came up with was two things. One was the creation of a larger sport council for the whole Columbia Basin. So that's including all the way down to like Trail and
Belmont.
Yeah, you're right. It goes all the way to Belmont. So it's a larger, much larger than Revelstoke, Golden, and such. So it's going to be a sport council. It's going to call, and the branding is called Pacific Sport. And we decided to go with the same branding because this exact same council is existing in all other areas of the BC. It's umbrella. There's an umbrella organization for all the other areas. We were missing. So there's now going to be a Pacific Sport Columbia Basin. Okay? And basically it's just the Columbia Basin Sport Council is what it's going to be. And it's to help to support and implement sport in our region. And what's interesting is all the other specific sports had to start up and figure out their own way to fundraise. And they would go to councils, to city and town councils, and that's how they would actually get money. And of course we're like, but they said that's why CBT has jumped in and why we're now ready to start our own. So CBT is supporting the creation of this, as well as Via Sport is coming in as a partner as well. Via Sport is basically government funded. Okay.
Federal or provincial?
I believe it's federal.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, I'm pretty sure it's federal. And we're not talking small amounts. They did throw around between $500,000 and $1 million just to get it started, and then continuing to support. That's just the startup. So we're talking about quite a bit of funding that's going to be becoming available. Now, Pacific Sport is big on programming and making sure that so rather than facilities, they're looking at programming. They want to see things happening. One thing that prompted this from Via Sport was that they saw there was no elite athletes coming from our area. Surprise, surprise. We just don't have, kids don't have really an opportunity. Kids who are born and raised here don't really have much for opportunity to go on to an elite level. They didn't see kids or people from our area. We're so low for Olympians. So few Olympians come from the Columbia Basin. And that was something that kind of prompted them one of the things, prompted them to want to put some more money in and help. So that's kind of what's happening on the much larger scale. On the smaller scale, we got funding, again, from CBT to create a regional sports council for Kaslo, New Denver, Silverton, and Newcastle, and surrounding region. And the reason why that's so important is because we needed to kind of band together to be able to then access Pacific Sport. right? Rather than each of our communities trying to access Pacific Sport for funding and you know, a programmer and that kind of thing, we're basically going to band together and be one voice to Pacific Sport. Say, okay, we need a full-time programmer. We need a full-time recreation programmer who's going to come and they can program for our area, as opposed to, okay, well, here's a part-time, little bit of funding, maybe help someone here, a little bit here. We're going to kind of draw ourselves together. And then the other big one is having a voice heard at Pacific Sport for what we need. Okay, I'm most likely, it's by invite. I'm most likely going to be invited to sit on the Pacific Sport board, which is really, really good. And what I need is not just Janice going to Supperfest, and yeah, I live in the cusp. I needed the backing of, I'm Janice Neufeld, and I'm the president of the cusp, or the partner with the North Kootenai Sport Council, with so many number of members from our whole region. And then I go representing like 600 or 1,000 or 2,000 members in different sports, then I can have a much larger voice to be able to access more funding and more opportunities. So that's what I'm here, was just to tell you of what it is that we were doing. So there's the bigger umbrella, there's money out there, we want it. And the best way for us to get it is we are starting the North Kootenai Sport and Recreation Council, and we're going to be inviting kaslo, all the area clubs, to join. And anytime a club joins for $10, all those members of the club then become a member of this umbrella organization, and then make our voice sound louder, and we're going to be more likely to be able to get access more funding. Then also what we're going to do is we're going to help coordinate the three communities. We can start to kind of work together, the three communities, so that we can maybe draw coaches, because again, they want to help pay for coaches. So we could draw a coach with more experience and expertise to actually be a coach maybe on three communities, and maybe we could have this figure skating program again here. Right? But right now, Kaslo's too small. Who's going to move to Kaslo to be a figure skating coach? But if maybe all three communities have a figure skating program, and we hire one coach and they can coach all three, it'd be a lot more. And they're willing to pay half the coach's fee, that kind of thing. As well, we want to get a full-time administrator in the area who will put on programs, for everyone, not just kids too. We're talking, all ages, all abilities, Special Olympics, Aboriginal, everything. They want to see all the different communities supported. But yeah, a full-time administrator would not be great. You can put out a calendar and a list of clubs and keep it updated, and not rely on volunteers for everything. Because that's one thing that we all said when resounded throughout the area was volunteer burnout, and we needed paid positions to actually keep things running. So that's what it's doing. So for accessing funding, we're being a voice for sport, we're helping to coordinate services, we'll be an information place. We're actually going to have an actual spot. It'll probably end up being in New Denver, just because it's in the center, of where people can actually come, and it'll actually be a staffed office with, resources for people coming from outside of the community, want to know what's going on, or just moved here, and is there a ball club in Kaslo, and that kind of stuff. So just a place for information, and also just to help identify gaps and facilitate finding out what the community wants, so that we can then go to Pacific Sport to ask for the funding to make it happen. Is there any questions?
Council, Molly.
So what's the timeline like on this? Is it already?
It has been approved, and it is going ahead. It was already done as far as Pacific Sport is happening,
right.
And the funding has been approved and is going forward. How long that's going to take to actually funnel down to our level, I hate to say it, but that is probably going to be 2 years. They didn't tell us a timeline, but
right.
I'm going to say 2 years just because of how things kind of
Yeah.
takes time for everything to happen. Our smaller council, right away. We're hoping to have it up and running by the fall.
And so do you need support from council to support that? Or?
Well, yeah, support. Obviously, we'd love you to support us. But we don't need anything other than we just wanted you to know about it and support, and so you're not surprised when you start hearing about what is this going
right.
on and all that sort of thing.
So is there a website going to be associated with this?
There is a website up and running already that Val created. Is it on here? I want to say it's probably NKSRC. But if you were to Google North Country Sport and Recreation Council, I'm pretty sure it'll come up right now. We've started. We'll get something even better going once we're totally formally going. But yes, there will be a website with everything and updates and more information. And then eventually what we're going to be doing is actually getting board of directors, and we want to have a representative from Kaslo for sure on the board who's going to be most in touch with what Kaslo needs as far as what
And what role do the regional districts play in this?
That's a good question. We are looking and exploring, and Joe Shirko was at the meeting as well.
Okay.
So, he's all totally aware and understands what's going on. We are looking at the different rec commissions actually joining us. And it kind of, so rather, because right now the rec commissions, they have such a small pot of money to help, and they do what they can. But what we could do is actually help to coordinate all that together. That's what we're going to be doing anyways, right? We're going to be doing a lot of helping to give out funding. But if we were to have a program and say, okay, the rec council could pledge 5,000 now, and then go to Pacific Sport with that, then Pacific Sport's going to be that much willing. We could take that 5,000 and multiply it 10 times to make something really happen. So that's what we're going to be looking for, is actually the rec commissions to support us and be at that alternate funding to kind of help pledge that little bit. Because they've suggested other communities with Pacific Sport get the city councils to pledge little bits of money. And, that I said up front right away, it's like, don't go to the villages, that's not going to be the best way to get anything. So that's what we suggested. We said, what about the rec council, or the rec commissions? And Joe Shirko was right there when we were talking about that, and he seemed to be pretty amicable. But it's still right now in the hands of the rec commission. So we have to actually go to all the rec commissions and ask and see how much they're willing to pledge to our umbrella. But basically anything they pledge, except we would be trying to multiply that amount of money.
And is there a business plan? Year 1, year 2, year 3, like a 5-year business plan, so people know what they're putting their money into?
Hard to say a business plan. It's not that we're necessarily trying to grow anything or become anything. We're there to support. And I think that sometimes, a lot of it's going to be, where do you want us to go? Because that's really what we are. We're not in and of itself trying to make something happen. It's going to be, we're there to listen and find out what do you want to happen, and we'll kind of go. Personally, what I see is within the year having an office, and within 2 years having a full-time paid employee who will be a recreation administrator for the region. And then within 5 years, just going from there as far as the number of programs we have offering available.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so you're in the North Country Sport, they're talking about reaching out to down to Slocan, Barton,
Yes.
in that area.
Yeah.
Slocan's quite a bit closer to Kaslo. They're not doing anything down there.
No, they're outside. The only other sports council is in Nelson right now, and they're outside the reaches of the Nelson one. So that's why we yeah.
So Kaslo is part of the Nelson one then.
No, you know what? Kaslo doesn't have one. They don't have one, so they're kind of strange. We're ahead of the game, by the way.
So
we're actually beating a few of the Crownbrook is behind the game too. So we're doing pretty good in gathering ourselves and getting organized a lot faster than some of the others.
Is the meeting set for Kaslo yet?
No, not that I have heard. It has.
No, according to this, there was the meetings
We
have
already
been
have
held
one
in
in
Augusta,
Augusta.
and New Denver's coming up in a week or two.
Yes. I don't think we've set the date yet for Kaslo. Again, that wouldn't be something I'm going to be leading. That's something Val will be leading. She's really the expert on how to get the council up and running.
Just a question. You talk about you want members to sign up. Are you talking about individuals or groups?
It hasn't been totally determined yet. That's something that we're going through the process, and when we have the council meeting, we'll be hearing from people, how do you want your membership to look like? How do you want the structure of it? Because it's going to be a nonprofit organization, so it's all those same questions that we have to answer when starting any nonprofit. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be either. But it could be either or. You can get an individual membership or you can get a club membership. And it's the same amount either way, $10. And even that's not totally confirmed, but most likely that's what it will be.
So you would take like a membership application from the Kaslo Golf Club or the Kaslo Curling Club or any of those organizations?
Yeah, that's what we would be hoping. That's what we're going to be inviting.
Okay.
Is eventually inviting every single club, and it can be formal or completely informal, like the Wednesday Walkers. Right. It can be, and we can be there to support and to help in any way we can. Right. To either if we want to have promotion of what is going on, so that people know about it, or if they need access to funding or to facilities.
Susan?
I guess this would sort of could be a contentious question. Has there been a definition of sport been identified? Because as we've known from sitting on
Yes.
a local rec commission,
Yes,
there are varying opinions as to what constitutes recreation for different.
Yes.
Because you mentioned different abilities
Yes.
of people.
Yes. So that's a very good question, and it is something still up for debate. It is not confirmed whatsoever. However, us at the smaller level, we're discussing talking about it being open to input. It's really, we're not going to, if somebody wants to become a member, and it's the, the closers and stuff like that, we won't turn them away. Now that said, Pacific Sports, will we go to Pacific Sport for funding? Probably not, because Pacific Sport made that mandate is physical activities. So they want to see people becoming healthier, physically active people. So at our council, we're pretty broad in the sport. That's why we're calling it the Sport and Recreation Council, within the broad term of recreation.
Yeah.
However, Pacific Sport is sport. So we're here to support everyone. But when we're going to represent Pacific Sport, that's going to be more on behalf of the clubs that make you sweat. It's hard to find the right definition, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
Is there a relationship with Interior Health? Because Councillor Holland and I went to a meeting where they were talking about these same things. So I'm just wondering, they're really pushing active participation in like walking. They didn't formalize it, but Jim, do you remember? I mean, they were pretty into communities creating opportunities for activity.
Was it the Canada Sport?
Lori Gold and Healthy Communities?
Yeah, is that so familiar?
No.
This one?
No, it's IHA.
Okay.
Yeah, it's IHA, yeah.
Okay.
And
Well, is it IHA or is it a provincial organization?
IHA.
So Northern Interior Health don't have anything to do with it?
I don't know. The woman that spoke to us was a liaison that worked for IHA.
Yeah.
Was it Lori Gold?
Anyway, all I'm suggesting is that's something they're really pushing and promoting and asking councils to do and encourage sport and physical activity. So just to be aware that they also have a program, they're also looking for money, they're also trying to promote healthy communities where these events occur. So there might be an alliance there too, but I can see where specific sport is specifically trying to create opportunities moving towards Olympic medals.
It doesn't have to be that. That's definitely not.
No, I realize
it's just one thing that caught their attention.
Yeah.
But no, there was nobody specifically from IHA at the table.
Okay.
Yeah, the name's Carrie Wall.
Carrie Wall.
And she's the community health facilitator for East and West Kootenays for the Healthy Communities Initiative.
Oh, okay.
That's what they're doing.
Okay.
All kinds of things around it.
Yeah, as far as actually that they weren't involved in this in some way, but no, they weren't.
It's funded by Conservation Trust.
So the other thing that was adopted as well by our task force is the Canada Sport for Life model. And this is going to be kind of the model that we'll be following for how to implement sport And this is more specifically for kids, but it's to create Canada Sport for Life communities, which basically is opportunities for everyone to get active and healthy. And it's good in that it talks a lot more about physical literacy, which is, so rather than teaching sport-specific skills, it's teaching kids, and anyone for that matter, how do you throw a ball? Well, it's the same, very similar mechanics, how you would throw a ball as to how you would swing a bat, as to how you would swing a golf club, and how would you do it, what muscles would you use, and what are some of the similar traits and all these things, and sort of teaching physical literacy from a younger age. And so they want to fund people who are willing to become coaches specifically for this. So this would be all paid for by Columbia Basin, to find coaches to know how to teach these camps and programs for kids that are going to be basically giving kids skills that then they can take into any sport as they get older, because they realize that in our smaller communities we don't have access to a ski jump or all these things, but they can learn sort of similar skills that then when they get a little older and they have the opportunity to go do something, they can give it a try. So that's another just a little FYI of what another model is that we're going to be adopting. We're going to try and make Castle and Denver become this Canada Sport for Life community.
I had a question about whether it's just supporting not-for-profit sporting organizations, or there's like the kayaking, they'll teach, kayaking and the gym and that kind of thing that also promote fitness.
Yeah.
Will they be involved, or is it okay?
Yes, so we're not turning anyone away from our regional council, so we're for-profit or not-for-profit. Again, we just want to have the more members and the more information and the more people involved, the better for us. On the Pacific Sports side, I'm going to say, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess that they're going to be more likely to want to give money to not-for-profits. So again, it depends on what it is they're wanting to get out of the relationship.
Okay, thank you for coming and informing us. So this sounds like a wonderful initiative, and I will look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Can I ask a quick question about Sufferfest?
Oh, yeah.
It said Sufferfest here. So what's happening in Castle for Sufferfest? Because it's a different model this year.
I hadn't heard back from you guys, but I sent a letter and some. Did you get that? Okay, good. Okay, so it's the trail runs, so the 10K, 25K, and 50K, as well as the kids races and the Marine Devon Crit. I just had a meeting with Barb Schuta and Steve Anderson, and they are your two new race directors for Castle. So they're basically taking over for me here in Castle. I'm still going to be here, but it's going to be too hard for me to try and do everything. So they've been wonderful, step up to the plate, and they're going to help to make it happen here. And everything's very, very similar to the way it's gone in the past as far as the trail runs. So it's just going to be on the Saturday, the trail runs. No bay this anymore. We've eliminated that little bay loop, so they're just going to be going straight onto Water Street with the same finish and just using Water Street as in the past. The only thing that was new, I believe in my letter, was the Marin Devon Crit. We had many requests last year saying that little crit, I don't know if you see that or seen it in the pictures, it's kind of more of a fun event. It's not a serious event. So there's those costumes and people are on funny bikes and that sort of thing. It goes on in the evening at 6 o'clock. And it's very spectacular friendly. It's what it is loops. And so we did it at Vinnie Park last year just for simplicity, but everybody unanimously said they thought it should be downtown. So we would like to be able to use Front Street for that. I've talked to a number of the businesses, and none of them seem to be the least bit concerned because it was after business hours street. So we would want to be able to do a soft closure from 6 to 7 on the Saturday evening. Now when I say soft, it's because we don't really the parking, and we can let cars go as needed, as careful, you know, it's not like it used to be super strict because it's not a real race. It's almost more of an exhibition.
Great.
That's good, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Have a great drive home. Thank you.
You didn't ride your bike over?
I thought about it. Yeah, I'd need a bunch of headlights. See you guys.
Okay, moving on to section E, business, item 1, gas tax. Mr. Smith, would you like to comment?
Well, after some wait, you finally have the new guidelines for gas tax with the new criteria, largely as announced some time ago by the federal government. Reporting requirements are still the same, but the eligibility criteria is much wider. Everything from a road paving project to a local airport to a broadband project to typical infrastructure is now eligible. The criteria is retroactive to anything held in reserve. What isn't there is I did look up the projections on what kaslo would be due every year. This year it should be about $91,000, and very similar the year after that, but it will take a little bit of a jump up to around $100,000 in the latter phase of the 5-year agreement. So we have a degree of predictability around what's coming, what it can be used for. Again, we shouldn't get too excited about using it up against, for example, Build Canada funds, because federal doesn't really gel with federal too well. They've been pretty clear on that. You might be able to do a little, but not much. So, for example, if you had a Build Canada water project, the chances are you'd have to find your other portion from reserve or provincial third or something like that. But there are opportunities in there for City Hall and third-party groups. So when Council wants it, I would encourage Council to consider their own proactive policy around gas tax for the next 5 years. Because the remit is now so wide, and all comers will likely be coming to our door.
Yeah, the minister was saying it did. I've seen that it's talking about the cultural stuff too, since it's all the warned over about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
So how much have we got in gas tax on at the moment?
So
That's unallocated.
Unallocated, approximately, roughly about $170,000.
Is unallocated
About 130 is allocated for this fiscal year already.
of the
So we're sitting at about 300,000 at the moment, but a lot of that's already allocated to Water Street and other projects.
Now, as I read this, that funding can now be used for these things.
That's
It's not tied to the old funding system.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. That's UBCM are happy with that?
I don't know. It doesn't see. It doesn't look to me that the UBCM had a lot of input in the result. It's very similar to what the federal government announced.
Okay, so we don't have to go to UBCM to get permission to do things as long as it's covered in this description here.
If it's more unconventional or borderline, I'd be talking to UBCM before I went ahead and funded something, just to make sure. For example, I have a question in right now around the paving of roads, just to be absolutely certain that something like that would actually fly. I mean, it's very wide, and really we're now going to be doing a lot of reporting, and I'm not sure how how much energy we really put into it, because there's a lot less in the way of criteria to meet that.
But it would be good then to start very quickly if we're going to have criteria for that funding, because if it's going to be totally open, we don't start some guidelines, we're going to run into some problems if we, at a later date, do guidelines. So,
Well, my only comment, as I mentioned before the meeting started, was that $90,000 sounds like a lot of money. But if you're giving $5,000-10,000 away to every group that comes to the council table, it can be gone in no time, and it can be lost as a resource for municipal infrastructure.
right. So we should come up with some guidelines then soon, before we give any money.
I think it's safe to assume nothing's going to transpire this year over and above what we've already committed, so really.
Not unless you want to tell them the financial plan.
Right.
Right.
But probably that wouldn't be prudent until we have established some guidelines and see where this is going. And then with the new council coming on, they may have different ideas again. So,
Yeah.
so suffice to say that we're not likely to open up the budget and try to go on a spending spree this summer. Barely.
What role does the public play? Because it's the public that's buying the gas, that's providing the money for the fund.
Well, I still see council as the stewards of that money, and I think we have to be using it for the benefit of the majority of people, you know. I don't personally like the idea of divvying it up like a rec grant type scenario where you're just handing out bits and pieces all over the place.
Yeah.
I think we try to reach some consensus on a couple of impactful projects and then go from there, rather than open the doors for everybody to walk in and say, well, we'd like a little of this and we'd like a little of that. I think that could create havoc and confusion.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the issue is going to be, will not affect your taxes. So that opens up the door to projects which council would, I think, try to glean from some type of public process where the public thinks the priorities are. And there's two ways to do that. One is we establish the priorities and then talk to the public about it. I think that would be the proper thing to do. But there could be some ideas out there that merit consideration. That's all I'm wondering about. I mean, because I don't think people understand the gas tax quite frankly. I think there's a real educational process here in terms of this is not tax money. This is for things that we're not going to tax you for.
Well, they already have the tax.
They've already paid
Yeah.
already paid at the pump.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I'm just saying, I share Neil's concern here that this is more government downloading. Real simple, you got gas tax money playing your life. We're not going to do this anymore, we're not going to do that anymore because you have access to gas tax money. Well, roads is a good example. The third looks like it's in jeopardy now. Water systems. I don't know. I mean, this is where I think at UBCM there will be a considerable amount of discussion about this, and hopefully, what are other communities going to do?
I think that's why it makes it even more important for us to set criteria if there's a danger of those kind of programs coming to an end. If we throw it wide open and, you know, give the community the impression that, you know, all comers are going to, you know, basically going to be able to dip into the trough, and then we cannot look after municipal needs, which do, in most cases, benefit the greater number of the citizens. And, you know, councils are elected to represent the citizens.
Right.
And one would hope that councils wouldn't make decisions that are, you know, contrary to the majority of the people in the village. So, do we need to set a meeting, or are there any criteria that, you know, that you could come up with as a baseline, a base for us to work with?
Yeah, I'm currently wrestling with the schedules for the non-statutory reserve consolidation bylaw. One schedule that would be in there would be for this one, but you wouldn't. The policy or the criteria, if council could agree, could go into that bylaw if you wanted, or you could leave it outside, which leaves it a little more free for the next council to throw around a bit. Looking at our reserves, this is probably a really unpopular suggestion, but one inclination one thing I would probably throw about at a finance meeting would be the idea that if funds are given to a third party outside of local government for non-infrastructure, a corresponding amount is raised from requisition that goes into one of the capital reserves in the same financial year. So that if you're losing that funding for municipal purposes, a corresponding amount is also being raised to go into a capital reserve for infrastructure. So that there is a price for it going outside of local government. But that's an external thing that could do that wouldn't jeopardise any of the criteria associated. But I would suggest a finance meeting.
Yeah.
Well, that can go on the next agenda.
And my only comment is I'm a little concerned about staff's time and availability on something like this, which I think is maybe an issue that is not of high priority at this particular moment.
I'm already knee deep in this from the reserve point of view. So
You know best what time you have available.
This will complement what I'm doing there. I've got a number of inquiries out on in that area, so now I can add it to the finance agenda.
Moving on then, E2 project comeback. There's a 52-page report here. I must confess I haven't read the whole thing from cover to cover. I don't know if any of you have. What would be appropriate here? A motion to receive or something of that nature?
I'll move to receive.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, item E3, bylaw 1130, land use housekeeping amendments, CAO.
Yeah, this is so that I didn't want council to be too blindsided because you might have forgotten some of the other items. And if we're opening up the land use bylaw, there's a couple of other things that probably should get dealt with at the same time, as we have to do the public process anyway. So just to take you through it, there's a few things in there, and some of them are quite important that they get addressed. General Regulation 2.1, you may recall, there was an issue around the offensive trades language. Wasn't long after I arrived that became an issue, so that there are already resolutions in place to address that. We need to restore, at least is my advice, that we restore accessory use limitations to the bylaw. For some reason they dropped off the face of the earth with bylaw 1130. All of these changes are consistent with the OCP. There's no need to amend the OCP. So these are things that have disappeared between the old zoning bylaw and the new one, which are really, I really recommend they come back. Right now, you're not protected by anything like the accessory use limitation language you see there. So someone could build a garage and nothing else on a residential lot. 2G, home occupation. That's based on changes that are based on some advice we received last year. Carriage houses. There's a real, having talked with the building inspector and our own staff at length, there's a real shortage of detail on the facilitation of carriage houses in the zoning bylaw. There's not enough detail to work with if someone wants to build one, and there's not enough detail to protect us from really bad planning. The language you see there is taken from a best practice example from elsewhere. There's quite a bit in there. Establishing minimum lot areas, maximum floor areas. None of this had been done before. Maximum heights, setbacks, the structure being in compliance with all pertinent bylaws of the BC Building Code. Again, this is reflective of Council's desires in the OCP to see carriage houses happen. Don't get me wrong there, but there should be some fairly typical and clear development regulations that go along with that. Currently, there's next to nothing. So it's been identified as a priority by RDCK building officials and my own staff as something that we've been concerned about. In Schedule A, we're changing out some definitions as well to put a little bit more detail on them. Mobile homes in particular is something that we need to be clear about what a mobile home is. And I'm also preparing the way for perhaps another bylaw in the future where we add some definitions for proper manufactured homes, modular homes and so on, as we may have to address some permitted use issues around there, but that may require going into the OCP at a later date, but it's good to have those things in there anyway. I'm putting these in at the same time because we are in construction season, and if anything sneaks through this year, we'll have to live with it. But so some of these I would consider quite important that we need to address as quickly as we can.
Really?
So there's been a lot of talking, and I think this is coming up at FCM, is it not, social housing? Anyway, the idea is that there's a movement towards smaller homes for single people, couples, no more than, some of them are less than 200 square feet.
Yeah, I had a picture of it.
Yeah. Anyway, so this has been a topic at UBCM for a number of years, and so I hope when we look at this, we're going to look at issues of smaller homes as part of the mix because of cost issues, because of rental issues, and that we're not going to get stuck with conventional, the term conventional housing. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think any of the changes here would threaten the village's policy on that. The language of the OCP has been fairly clear to try and promote density wherever possible in residential zones and make these things possible. However, the only question is, do you leave it wide open, or do you have some pretty clear, here's the rules, here's how it's going to be. Septic's been a bit of a bugbear, for example, with the building officials on the question of carriage houses.
Yeah.
There has to be enough capacity for the principal dwelling and for the carriage house. And any lack of clarity is seized upon, and it's a little too vague at the moment in there. But again, if council feels they want to spend a bit more time on that, I can easily throw that out of this bylaw, and you can come back to it another time. It's just that you don't want to be doing these amendments all the time.
I guess I'm wondering, where is the building inspector on somebody who wants to build a 300 square foot residence?
On a 300 square foot residence? Well, it's.
I don't think there's any building code for a 300 square foot residence. That's what concerns me.
Well, yeah, so if it's in the zoning bylaw, we can, we have our maxes and our minimums, but, yeah, it has to, the BC building code has to be followed. Yeah. I couldn't give you more detail than that right now.
Any structure over, I believe,
Yeah.
Councilor Hall might correct me on this, is over 10 by 10 requires a permit, I believe.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with permit. You know,
But once you
that's
apply
what
for a
the process
permit, then
is.
you're automatically subject to the.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't get locked into conventional housing here. I'm thinking of these alleyway houses in Vancouver. I mean,
Well, the bylaw states it can't be more than 60% of the footprint of the principal residence, so there's a limit on the size, on
How big?
the size, on the maximum size, but there's no specification on minimum size.
okay, well, all I'm saying is that there's a number of properties where a small home, I think they call them grandparents' homes and stuff like that they put in the backyard. I think that's requires a situation where we're not going to box ourselves into that you can't do that here.
But the real restriction, and
Yeah.
Neil said, is septic. I mean,
Yeah.
all of Lower Castle, forget about it, and probably most of Upper Castle to boot.
Well-
There just isn't this area space for a septic field. Until we get the sewer system built out, none of this is even possible.
Well, it depends on how big a sewer, how big a septic, if you got a septic field and you put in a big enough tank, you know, all I'm saying is that there are other ways to deal with septic in terms of electric toilets and recycled water and a number. So I don't know how far ahead we want to look here, but I just see a real need for the ability to have a small dwelling that can be rented for a reasonable price to younger people, older people, and a number of things like that. I just get very nervous about, you know, a situation where we can't be able to leave room for innovation or a variance to try something, you know what I mean?
Well, a particular proposal could apply for a variance from this, the council could review. It doesn't, that doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, well, as long as that ability for variance is there.
There's some examples we were actually, Glenn and I were looking this morning, some of them are as small as 384 square feet, and they're complete homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any further comments? This now will come to council as next week for adoption.
And there's also an advert there just for your review as well, just show you what the public notice looks like.
Okay. Moving on, E4, Water Street update, CAO verbal.
Glenn is moving quickly to prepare the way for Water Street. One of the more surprising aspects that there isn't, or perhaps it's not surprising in the sense that once something actually happens, people make up their minds about their own properties, is that we had intended as a council to leave the door open for the burial of power lines in the future. The prospect of a tie-in to the properties is proving to be too tantalising for most of the property owners to resist, including the Kaslo Hotel. So the expense in future of either the private property owners or the public purse paying for burying power lines is going to go up considerably. Maybe it's going to recede as a priority for the municipality for some time, because once you've got the tie-in, no one really wants to see it all dug up, or even if it isn't a nice, neat line.
I actually had a couple of people ask me why we're leaving that area. They would rather see it come as close to the back of properties and the property line as possible, because it could be problematic having that straight, especially when it's going to go back and forth, paved, not paved, and then Yeah, it might look.
No, and on the Ken front, I've had some discussions with the Columbia Basin Broadband Corporation advisor, Mr. Dr. Cohill there, and they definitely have a fairly tight timeline to get the broadband cable down before we're ready to do the curb gutter paving work. Because really, at the end of the day, if the surface goes down, the only option is the very expensive directional drilling underneath. So it's a little bit of a tough one on Kin, but I think they're up to give it a go, and we'll see in the next couple of weeks if they manage to get it done in time or not. We have been very clear that we can't wait for them, but if they've not got it done by the time we're ready to move on the project, that opportunity is probably missed.
Any questions, Council?
So I was just wondering a little bit more clarification about the people changing their minds about underground services. What was that?
Well, it was when I came into the situation, the compromise model that had been set out was one where we didn't pave the entire way to the properties, so that the possibility of power line burial at a future phase was left open as a possibility. However, because the paving company is here, most of the private property owners are wanting to pave from the municipal end to their properties and into their driveways. So something that some of the properties and owners had been indicating they were quite enthusiastic about and being on record to that fact a couple of years ago, are now kind of saying, no, I'm happy just getting it paved to my property now. It just puts the cost up if we ever do want to do it.
It's not hard to cut
And after all, that's what municipalities do. They pave streets, and within a couple of years, they start saw cutting them all to pieces. That's the way life is.
I just want to say I'm very happy about the work that was done at the back of the Front Street Park, because we were encroaching into the right of way as well. So I think it's good that we have the crew do that part as well. So we're walking the walk.
Yeah, we expect other people.
Yeah.
Any other comments? E5, animal attractant bylaw amendment.
This came up at Community of the Whole a couple of months ago, and this is the bylaw I plan to bring forward next week. As you can see, we're including the addition of deer, wild duck, wild turkey, or crow to the definition of animal. And we've changed some of the text in provision 11 around violation, so that I can put some actual penalties in the municipal ticketing bylaw.
We tell that to the crows on Main Street. They're getting bigger and bigger.
I suspect the ticket book would only be brought in for very severe situations, but we can certainly do that.
It's good.
Well, the activity of the bird feeding public's been going up. It's
Yeah.
classic form of that. And stuff, but they're not this evening. You come down at 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Bizarre.
That's serious.
Bizarre.
So where's it going?
She's dumping piles of grain around now, right in front of the post office.
In front of the post office.
Yeah, in front of the Senate's house, down at the park. I mean, if you just check out Chuck's car sometime, when Chuck comes to town, just see him drive around town, he's got a flock of ravens and all around. And then eventually, eventually there's going to be some problem with it. I mean, if we have another bird flu breakdown,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff, you know, avian flu breakdown or something like that, and you've got large populations that can animals cause problems.
So is there no, nothing from the IHA or Environmental Services, whatever it's called, about those kind of things, because of stuff like the avian flu?
So we haven't received any circulars on the subject, but I could certainly follow up with the public health official. Right now.
Yeah, really.
When I see this list of animals, especially coyotes, raccoons in particular, rabies comes to mind. And that used to be a fairly serious problem, which is now been corrected, but then we didn't have all the animals around we've got around now. So I wonder if there are some issues there in terms of, because I think the government was heavily involved in reducing rabies by reducing those animal vectors. Especially raccoons, because they're very normal. You know, when they get rabies, they'll go after you. They will scratch you and other animals. So have you had any experience with it?
No.
The rabies has kind of gone away. I don't know why it's hasn't been evident. But I remember when I was younger, it was a big deal. You know, whenever you saw an aggressive dog or something, it was, hey, be careful. So would that have any impact on our bylaw, do you think?
It would, the provisions in there are really about, it's really about animal attractants, things like feeding.
Yeah.
However, if you had a spate of incidents or a serious incident, this would at least, in concert with the detective bylaw, give the police and perhaps the animal control officer or the conservation officer some tools to do some enforcement if they really had to.
And the enforcement would be shoot them. So you think they have that?
Well, that's the.
I think they have that power.
Well, the conservation officer service has this because there's the.
Yeah, okay, I'm just wondering because
So, yeah.
given the nature of the communities.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, this will come up to council as for adoption. Any further comments on this? Nope. And unless there are further comments, I'm take a motion for adjournment. All in favor? Adjourned.